Alright, what's up guys? So we're at the shop right now and we are finally going to start the install on the coilovers that I just got. As I mentioned in the other video, I got the dedicated track Ohlins coilovers, which are custom valved for the new springs, the Swift springs. And hopefully, as I mentioned before, this will allow us to run a little bit lower so we get that nice fitment that I'm looking for, and also not having any more rubbing issues and all that stuff that goes with the coilovers that I'm currently running that are really bad. So my plans were not to install these coilovers for like another week, since the car was supposed to go to PPF tomorrow, but since that got pushed back a week, we said might as well go to the shop today on a Sunday and install the coilovers and kind of dial the car in, so while the car is chilling at the PPF, the springs can kind of settle, and then we can dial in the coilovers with a corner balance. So with that being said, I'm gonna show you guys some quick clips of the coilovers that we're gonna install, and then we're gonna get right into it. Alright, so we've disassembled, we've taken the wheels off, we've taken off the end link, and then we've also loosened the bottom collar for the hub. And all we have to do now is take these 3 bolts up here off, and we can pop the coilover out. But before we do that, we're going to start reassembling the Ohlins coilovers. And what that means is we're going to put the springs on, so the helper spring right here, which is going to keep these coilovers pre-tensioned. And once we go low enough, there's no wiggle room in between the main spring, so it's always in its working capacity. What I had with my ground controls, an issue was that this spring, if my car like uncompressed completely, would be able to move around, and that's not really safe, and it can mess up your driving handling since the spring can shift, and then we got different loads on that spring when it's shifted. So now what we have to do, since assembling this camber plate right here, it's kind of difficult since it's not reaching the threads right away, is we're gonna, instead of doing like a spring compressor and then attaching this, we're gonna loosen up the collars on the coilovers. We're gonna move it down to be able to tighten the camber plate itself, and then once we have that, I already measured what the distance is. We're gonna re-thread this collar back up to this height, and then hopefully that's all we have to do and we can install it. So with us saying that, we're gonna get to doing this, and then we'll show you guys the install inside the car. We're gonna take out my old coilovers, put them next to this, see what the height is, because we want to see if we're gonna keep it at this height or this much threads, because we're assuming that this whole shock itself is shorter than the ground control ones, but we're about to double check that. Alright, so here we got the side-by-side old coilovers versus the new coilovers. And you can already tell that the whole assembly, the Ohlins assembly, is a lot shorter than what the ground control setup was. And right here, so this is the extra collar you get with this kit, so it moves up the assembly by, I don't know, 1.5 centimeters maybe. It moves it up. So we're matching it up to this line right here, these two, and still we are that much lower from what the old setup was. And this is, it's a ground control camber / caster plate, whereas this is the Forschlag or Ohlins spec Forschlag camber plate, which is monoball bushings and everything. We are gonna move the springs up more to what it was originally with the kit, and we're gonna go from there and see how low the car is. It might be a little too low, honestly, if we already got a drop of that much, and my car was sitting pretty, not super nice, but it was sitting pretty nice. So we'll get to see what the drop is in a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier, these springs have the helper springs, which make sure that the spring right here is always in full engagement and is never basically wiggling around if you're going over a bump and your coilovers or your shocks expand the full range or go up the full range. This spring is never going to be not in contact, whereas this spring is loose, and that means that if we get full extension of the shock, we will have a loose spring, and I've heard it pop back into place a few times. So that means that it went full out, it rattled around, and then the dangerous part is that you'll have different compression ratios if it's like shifted off until it pops back into place. So with the new kit, we're not going to have that anymore, and I'm really excited to see the improvement with that. Alright, so we got the front coilovers in. We rebolted the top camber plate on, or the top hat of the coilovers onto the strut towers. We also did go full max camber for now, and then we're going to try to dial it in after. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's very easy to install coilovers. There's not much to it, but I do want to make sure that you guys are aware we ran into this. We forgot to put in, there's these cables that go in between the shock collar and the bolt that attaches the coilover strut to the hub, and we forgot to put that loop in between the bolt, so we had to take everything off. So make sure that you double check before you start tightening everything down that you have it in. Otherwise, it's a pretty simple install from that, but you do need 2 people if you're working on a lift, or if you had like a jack to lift it up, and then it helps you get it up easier. So now that we're done with the front, let's move to the back. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna undo the shock. We might do it from the trunk first and then lift the car up and then undo the shock. And then we'll be able, hopefully be able to take off the spring and the perch without having to remove the control arm. Otherwise, if we have to remove the control arm, the bolt goes this way and it comes into my caliper, and since I have a BBK, it means that we have to take the caliper off too, which just adds extra steps. Hopefully we don't have to do it, and if you don't have a BBK, it's a lot easier. So I'll keep you guys updated on what the process is going to be. Alright, now once you have your shocks and springs or old coilovers out, we're going to start putting in the new coilovers. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it in multiple steps. And first thing we have to put in is this rubber seat or seal, and then this pad on the top. And once we have that in, we can put it in the perch and then the spring, and that portion is all done. And then we can finally put in the shock, and everything will be reassembled.